Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this lecture on behalf of York Refugee Week, which we're hosting at Bootham School. My name's Liz Brown, and I've been coordinating to get this lecture happening this afternoon. And I'd like to, before I introduce the speaker, say thank you to Oxfam, who have funded the talk this afternoon through their Families Together funding. So a thank you to Oxfam and Sophie Morby, who accepted my grant application so that we can have this lecture this afternoon. This afternoon, our speaker is a highly sought after gentleman by the name of Gulwali Passarlay. Gulwali made an incredible journey at the age of 12 on his own, unaccompanied, from Afghanistan to the UK. Since he came to the UK, he's gone on to do incredible things. I'm just going to read you a little bit of what he's done here. Graduated with a politics degree from the University of Manchester, recently finished an MPA at Coventry University. He's an esteemed author. He wrote his autobiography, which is called The Lightless Sky, 12-year-olds refugees' harrowing escape from Afghanistan, and his extraordinary journey across half the world. And he's also it's also known as My Journey to Safety as a Child Refugee. So Gulwali has a real capacity to connect with you and to help you understand what it's really like to be a refugee. So I'm going to warmly welcome Gulwali now. He's going to talk to us for about half an hour, and after that, if you want to ask a question, if you're viewing in Bootham School, then the member of staff supervising you needs to email me and I will get the question up on the screen. If you're watching from outside Bootham, a very warm welcome. Please, you can use the chat function and I'll see your questions come up on the screen. So with no further ado, a big welcome, Gulwali.
Thank you very much, Liz. Great to be with you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. So my name is Gulwali Passarlay. As Liz say, I'm the author of this book called The Lightless Sky. If you have read it, thank you. If you haven't, actually right now, this week we have an ebook discount promotion happening on Amazon. It's just 99p. So I encourage you to please download it on Kindle and have a read. It's about 15-20 years of my life, my journey, my experiences of coming to the UK as an unaccompanied minor, as a refugee child. So I do this kind of talk often to raise awareness, to hopefully inform people about the refugee journeys and experiences. And this week is the Refugee Week. And this week's theme is We Cannot Walk Alone. And I just been reminded in my book, there is a line I have said that none of us walk alone in life. And we always have our family and friends and companions and supporters and people who encourage or discourage us. So it's part of life. So the Refugee Week is normally about the celebrations and acknowledgement and the contributions and resilience of refugees. So it happens every year. Of course, the challenges that refugee faces is throughout the year, but it's good that there's a week and there's a day every year where we celebrate and bring people, talk about displacement, refugees, asylum, and migration. I'll tell you the summary of The Lightless Sky, a brief story, and trying to connect it to what's happening in the UK and as well as in Europe when it comes to refugee rights. I was born in Afghanistan, in eastern Afghanistan, a place called Nangarhar, into a family where my father was a doctor. I had quite a well-off family, but I spent most of my time in the mountains, living with my grandparents as a shepherd. I have good memories of this early childhood from age 3, 4 till age 7 or so. I lived in the mountains. We had sheep and goats, and we had a very nomadic life. My grandparents were all age, but they enjoyed being in the mountains, and I also I joined them. I didn't spend much time with my own parents or siblings, but at the age of 7, we had to come back and sell our sheep and goats because my father and my uncles were disapproving of my grandparents having, living in the mountains. It's quite a harsh environment. I started school at the age of 7. That's when you start school in Afghanistan. We had very basic facilities. So for those of you students who are listening and watching, basically we sit under trees in summer. And in winter, we used to cut trees and stuff and put it on top of the roof because the building was destroyed in the war. We had very basic facilities, no chairs, no table. So I want you not to take anything for granted, this opportunity that you have when it comes to education. I remember my first year, I struggled. I didn't enjoy school. I didn't like it because I enjoyed being a shepherd. I was kind of forced to go to school. But once I was able to make friends and get used to it, the second year I went to my second year, and sadly the war began. So the US-led invasion happened. My country and my home became a war zone. We literally lived in constant fear of being killed. by bombardments, by rocket attacks. I remember in early 2001, which I was quite young, we used to go and hide in bunkers from these attacks. So for me now, just telling you the story, it's easy to tell you the story, but actually going through it, it was a life and death situation. And sadly, in the last 13, 14 years I've been in the UK, things have not improved. Right now, there's, every day I wake up, I check social media, people are dying. There's suicide bombing, there are attacks, there are all sorts of inhumane things happening. Violence has increased, and the suffering of people. We lose around 100,000, 150,000 civilians in the last 20 years. So usually we have about 10,000 deaths in Afghanistan. And so just yesterday, there was a peace index report out. Afghanistan consecutively, this is the fourth year, has been the least peaceful country in the world, the most insecure country in the world, followed by Yemen and Syria and other places in the world. So, but sadly, the thing that kind of bothers me is that the European Union, the EU, as well as the UK, has been constantly deporting Afghans, those Afghans who come here as refugees, and their case is not accepted when they claim asylum. The Home Office claim Afghanistan is safe, and I wish it was. I wish I would be the first one to go back when it was and when it becomes safe. So there's double standards, and I'll tell you later on. But like, if you go on the Foreign Office website, it'll advise British citizens not to travel to Afghanistan because it's unsafe. But then it's okay for Afghan asylum seekers to be deported, which again doesn't make sense. Anyhow, about age 12. A lot of things has happened, and so a lot of conflicts and wars and oppression, injustices. Sadly, lost members of my family in the war. By members of my family were killed by the U.S. forces. We were a pawn between the Taliban and the new government, the American forces. It was a tough situation. Our family decided to send me and my brother away for our own safety, to send us to Europe. They paid a lot of money to smugglers. My grandmother and my mom had a huge say in it. I mean, I never really listened to my mom, and for once I did, and she sent me away, which took me about a year, 12,000 miles journey across 10 countries or so. So the journey started over. We went to Pakistan, and then from there we were supposed to travel, headed over to smugglers. Me and my brother was together, and my mom told us to stay together and hold on to each other's hands, and no matter how bad it gets, don't come back. So I wasn't very keen. I felt guilty. I felt bad leaving my family in such a difficult circumstances. Although I was young, but I had an understanding of the situation, and I was in places like Afghanistan. You become an adult before your time. So we were quite mature children, and we didn't consider ourselves as children. We were responsible and accountable kind of young people. So the journey began, and the smugglers sadly separated us even before the journey started, and I was kind of upset about it. But they told me I'll see him at the next destination. Then we traveled to Iran. I was hoping to meet my brother. My brother was not there. I met other Afghans, other refugees who took me in as a friend, as a little brother, and we became travel companions. We traveled together across Iran, which took a few weeks or around a month. One day we crossed border to Turkey. At night, we walked literally a whole night to get to Turkey. A lot of things happened in between, but I'm trying to give you a brief summary in a perspective of this difficult ordeal and journey. We were all constantly trying to hide from the police and from authorities because we were scared of them. So when we got to Turkey, we spent a lot of time in trucks at night. At night, we used to actually walk. During the day, we'll be in trucks to travel across Turkey. It's a huge country. It took us about a week and 10 days, or around 10 days, to get from the Iranian border towards Istanbul. We were kept in places where you don't keep human. The smuggler treated us pretty badly. They saw us as a commodity. The smugglers just basically made money out of our desperation. And I think the smuggling network, there were some good smugglers as well. There were some good people who were nice to us, but majority were just in it for the money. They couldn't have cared less about our safety and well-beings. Spent a lot of time in Istanbul. We were mainly hidden in basements most of the time by the smugglers. I was once taken to Bulgaria by a train. There's a lot of things I was doing for the first time, so I was kind of curious but not curious. I wish we had a plan, not knowing what is going to happen, how long it's going to take us. Nobody told us anything. We just had to follow orders blindly. But one day I was taken on this train journey, which was very unusual. I was fitted to the seals of the train in a compartment. After some hours, I was asked to jump from a moving train, which was kind of again unusual. And I resisted, but I was pushed by the guy, the facilitator, or the whomever it was, the smuggler's man. I saw around people broken their arms and legs, and there was really sad scenes at this place. I was able to balance myself, but I still hurt myself a little bit. Being a shepherd in the mountain definitely helped. And then we were arrested anyway. So we were trying to avoid border checkpoints, but we got arrested anyway, and taken to the hospital before taken to prison. I was hopeful, and that I have heard that Bulgaria was a European country, and I was hoping will treat us with some sort of dignity and respect, and perhaps ask us for asylum, or our human rights will be respected. But actually, they were very cruel and inhumane to us. After a week or so in prison, they deported us back to Turkey in the middle of December of 2006. We had to walk back in snow, and they were pointing their gun at us. And unfortunately, in the last 13 years or so since I've been here, things has not improved between the borders of Turkey and Bulgaria. People are constantly harassed and tortured by the militaries as well as by local militia groups there. I know of about 35 people dying in Bulgaria in the last few years, mainly Afghans. So yeah, things has not got better, sadly. And then back to Istanbul. Sometime later, I was supposed to go on another route to Greece. The smugglers constantly lied to us. They never really told us the truth. And then this route was very dangerous that we had to walk for days on end. And we were not told about this. We had to cross small rivers. And there were a lot of landmines in the border area. There's a land border between Greece and Turkey. So physically and mentally, we were not prepared for this journey. There were some people who made the journey didn't survive. People used to tell us stories about how hard this was to cross the border by foot and cross the jungle in the forests. We realized we were being headed on this route without being told, and so we were hoping to find a way or be arrested. And thankfully, we got arrested by the police 2 days later. But little did we knew that the Turkish prison was as bad as the journey itself. So then we ended up spending about 2 weeks in prison in Istanbul. And our crime, we didn't commit any crime other than seeking protection and safety, which was our human rights. That I know now. I didn't know then. I had a really tough time in prison in Istanbul. Give us very little food. Our freedom was taken away. It was overcrowded. There was actually criminals in this prison. I was one of the youngest person in this prison. I shouldn't have been there. I should have been perhaps in a children's prison, but that's another story. Sometime later, then they deported us all the way back to Iran, and that's why the journey took me a year. Those the back and forth, the snakes and ladders. So back to Iran was actually crossing back was a lot more harder than coming from the other side. And when we arrived to the border in Iran, the Turkish army, the border guards sent us to the other side at 2 o'clock in the morning. We had no idea what to do in the middle of a nomad land. There were refugees who were taken as ransom by mafia groups. The Turkish authorities and the Iranian knew that this was happening in the area, that there were mafia groups, criminals operating, taking refugees as ransom and asking for money. But they did not exchange us directly, so they just let us go, and then we had to find our way. Thankfully, there was 75 of us. 25 people went with the mafia group people, and then 50 went with the police. I was one of those people who went to the police. They were not very nice to us. Kind of beat people, took their money, the police, and made us, stand kind of without clothes, an early morning cold breeze. And then we were taken to prison in a nearby city. We spent a week or so there, and they asked us to pay for our own transportation to Afghanistan. And the concern I had was, if I go home, my mom will be asking me about my brother, and my family will be saying, what happened to my brother? No matter what I say, they will not believe me. They will think he's dead. So somehow I had to find a way to not go to Afghanistan. And I wasn't really bothered about the conflict in the war, the implications of what was happening. So I had to run away from the Iranian police prison bus, which was a very dangerous and risky thing to do because they had guns and they told us not to even think about it. I managed to persuade two of my friends. We made a run for it, and we managed to be succeeded. Made the similar journey back again. The second time we had an idea. We knew how tough it was in the first time, and the second time we were not as much curious at what's going to happen, but it was a lot more harder. I remember the second time when we crossed the border at a different point than the first time. The Iranian border guard shot at us. We literally missed bullets near our head and ears. And in recent years, there's been many deaths of Afghans crossing the Iranian and Turkish border. They just literally use live animation. They couldn't care less. So it's so wrong and inhumane, but that's what they do. We managed to get to Turkey again, similar journey across Turkey, a lot of walking at night, and then being in trucks hidden in the back for a few weeks. Sometime later, back in Istanbul. So I spent a lot of my time in Istanbul, but we weren't allowed to see the city. We were just hidden in basements by the smugglers. One day we were taken to a place called Izmir. It's a port city, supposedly a very beautiful place. We would draw a whole day in small vans. There were like 35 people in each. It was quite small and very, very hot. In Izmir, we were left in the middle of nowhere. It was just like literally a valley. And then from there, we were walked by some smugglers to the sea. I have never seen the sea before. I was very frightened. I was really scared to see the sea. And we were supposed to board a boat to Greece that evening. The boat did not arrive for whatever reason. Then we went back to the forest, to the jungle, and we stayed there for 3 nights, 3 days and 3 nights. And the smuggler just disappeared, and our food, water, everything ran out on the first day. We kind of knew that we could go and give ourselves to the police, but then we knew how brutal they were and how we perhaps be imprisoned and then deported. So we persevered and stayed there. And the third evening, the smugglers came back with a box of tomatoes and some water and Turkish bread, gave us a tomato each and half a glass of water, which we're grateful for. These little things that we take for granted in life now that was so important, the basic necessity of life. We were taken in a small boat, like a speedboat, to a bigger boat. The big boat wasn't really big. They put 120 of us in a boat designed for 20 to 30 people. It was literally overcrowded. It was, the captain had an argument with the smugglers that there was far too many people, and somehow they managed to push everyone. Like they put about 60 people underneath. There was a small place in the boat, and then put the rest of us outside. I was one of the luck played a big part. I was one of the lucky one to be the last one because I couldn't get into the smaller boat. It was very slippery. Everybody was pushing. It was dark at night, so I managed to be one of the last people, and that helped me. Then I was able to sit very close to where the captain was. I was seasick. I've never seen the sea before. I was frightened. I was scared. There was some food and water on board, which ran out in the first night. We were supposed to be in Greece in 4 hours, according to smugglers. We ended up being in the sea for almost 48 hours, almost 2 days and 3 nights. And the third evening, if things wasn't getting worse, our boat break down. And to be honest, on many occasions, I thought, I saw death with my own eyes, but here I was certain that we were going to die because our boat break down and water was coming in. We were trying to balance the thing and trying to throw water out. If the Greek coast had not came in to rescue us, our boat would have drowned and would have capsized. There has been about 20,000 or so people dying in the last 5 years across the Mediterranean and the Aegean Sea. It's absolutely heartbreaking. Could have easily been, these nameless people. These are individuals and people with hopes and dreams and aspirations and wanting to have a better life and a safer future. And their life ended. So we were very fortunate to be rescued by the Greek Coast Guards. They somehow saw we were in distress and found us and took us to safety. I've been seeing videos of the Greek Coast Guard now actually purposely drowning people or pushing them to be drowned. And through illegal pushbacks, there's been a few reports by Amnesty International and other human rights organizations condemning it, and UNHCR saying this is not okay. So the same Greek Coast Guard who saved me are now not saving lives. So that's how things has not improved because of politics, because of resources, because of other reasons. I don't know, racism in the EU and institutional ideologies. So in Greece, we had an interesting time. We were in prison. This was a children's prison, much better than the one in Turkey and Bulgaria and in Iran. I was 11 of us in prison. We were supposed to leave the country in a month. That's what we were told by the government because we have entered undocumented and irregularly. People say illegally, like nobody's really illegal. That's quite a dehumanizing language. But yeah, people do travel illegally. People do travel without the right documents and stuff. But we traveled illegally to Greece, and that was kind of criminal according to the law of the country and so on. They told us either to be deported or to leave the country by our own means. We say we will leave your country, fine, and then put us in prison, which didn't make sense. After 2 weeks, doctors and nurses helped us to get us out of the prison. Although the prison guards were very nice, they gave us food and they looked after us. We were able to take shower, have new clothes. But then we were taken to a refugee camp in the outskirts of Athens. The next day we ran away, which we kind of had to. We didn't have much time in our papers that we had. For the first time in about 9 months into my journey, I was asking about my brother everywhere I went. And I met a smuggler. He had met my brother Hazrat, which was great. And he told me that my brother was heading to the UK. So for the first time in my journey, I had a destination in mind. And I need to get to Britain somehow. Until Greece, I had smugglers and people traffickers and people taking me on. But from there, I had to find my own way. There was 6 of us, my friends, in this place called Patra in Greece, a port city. And the smuggler trying to help me to put me on a lorry lorry to get to Italy. He was showing me how it's done, and I just got lucky. I was on top of a lorry engine, managed to get across. There were people there for months, and I saw how the Greek police and army were beating people with sticks. These were refugees and people who have fled violence, persecution, injustices, police brutalities in places like Afghanistan, Iran, and elsewhere in the world, and were treated really badly by the Greek authorities. And this place was it was like a shanty town, and it was not a very nice place. So I got very fortunate to be able to get across, but the engine was really hot and risky. Um, the smuggler wasn't expecting me to get across. He was just showing me how it was done. After 5-6 hours or whatever the trip was, I made it to Italy. The engine did cool down in the boat and the ferry, and then in Italy, about 2 hours on the motorway, I got the driver's attention with a rock in my bag, a small stone. The driver was very surprised to see me when he came down finally, when he stopped on the side of the motorway, and I literally came underneath his lorry. I came out of underneath his lorry. He was surprised to see me and was telling people, "Look at this guy." And I was trying to explain to him that they have not seen what he has seen. Then he went on his way, and then I was there for the first time in my journey. I didn't had a guide. I didn't had a smuggler, a facilitator, friends, so I didn't really knew what to do, what to expect. After some time, about maybe 10 minutes, the police arrived. I could see those farms of oranges and grapes, but nothing else. And the police took me to the police station. They were very nice. Before taking me to the police station, got me some food. Asked me if I was hungry. They got me some orange juice, croissant in a sandwich, which was really nice of them. And they didn't have to do that, but they showed kindness and humanity towards me. I was able to wash my face because I was all blackened by the engine smoke and oil. I was able to change my clothes in the police station. Language was a big barrier, so we couldn't communicate it well. They took me to a care home. I stayed there for 2 weeks. For the first time in my life, I didn't have to run for safety, and this place was great. The people looked after me. I was able to take shower, have clothes, food, but then I needed to get to England to find my brother. So these people did not understand that I needed to leave and somehow find a way to England. I'm grateful to these people like care home. I never thought I'd write a book, and now it's published in 7 countries, including Italy. So it's I love to find the people who help and support me. The place was near Bari, somewhere in southern Italy. I ran away from that place after 2 weeks. Made it to Rome on a 4 or 5 hour train journey. It was terrible to see people sleeping in car parks, people sleeping in cotton boxes, people just being on the streets, refugees. It was sad to see, and I kind of regretted living a very safe and secure place. But it was strange being safe and secure after a long time. I didn't think it was normal. And then from there onwards, I got some help from a friend of my brother. It was actually Eid Day the next day, which I didn't knew. I forgot about the sense of time. There was no point counting days and weeks and months, because the most important thing on this journey was survivals, getting food, getting shelter, being safe. So time became irrelevant. I mean, I was counting days and weeks and it was not passing. And earlier on, so I kind of forgot about it. And then I realized the day I jumped and ran away from the care homes in near Bari was my 13th birthday, which I didn't really knew that it was October. I found out this when we were writing the book, and I asked Google when was Eid in 2007, and it was actually on the 12th of October. So yeah, my birthday is on the 11th, and so that's how I knew. I made it to Paris a few days later on a train. A lot of things happened in between. Paris was a beautiful city, but it was cold. I spent a cold night in the park. The police was very mean to us. And the next day, I went to Calais, the jungle. I have heard a lot of things about the Calais jungle. It was a lot more miserable than I have imagined. This was a lot worse than what people has told me. I spent a month there, which felt like 3 months. And that place is not far from us. I was able to see England. I was able to see Dover, but I was not able to get in. I made many attempts. The police was very harsh to us. They would harass us and treat us very badly. It was humiliating. It was cold. After about 100 attempts, I made it to the UK in a back of a refrigerated truck. And it was very similar to the one that a few years ago, the 39 Vietnamese people lost their lives in. Again, I could have so easily lost my life if the driver had put on the freezer. There were 7 of us in this truck, in this refrigerated truck. So we survived and getting to the UK. I was very pleased and hoping to be reunited with my brother, but thing was not as simple. We got arrested. The police were nicer to us compared to the one in France and elsewhere, but maybe not as good as the Italian officers. But after some time with the police, we were taken to the immigration center in Dover. From there, our asylum journey began, which was somewhat the same, if not harder, than the actual physical journey from Afghanistan to the UK, the 12,000 miles back and forth. And yeah, the journey one started with the immigration officials not believing that I was an Afghan national, then social services disputing my age in Kent. I had a tough time. It took me 2 years to challenge them over my age dispute and my nationality dispute. There was a system of disbelief. It was very dehumanizing. I felt unwanted, unwelcomed, and again, sadly, things has not improved. Right now, the French police and authorities take people's blankets and shoes in Calais and Dunkirk with our British taxpayer money. We pay the French to basically stop the people coming over by whatever means, and they go and harass refugees, take their tents and blankets and shoes, and it's just terrible. Really heartbreaking that things has not improved or got better for refugees. And so even in the UK, the situation with the new immigration plan that the government wants to bring in, wants to make it so people like me will not even be admitted, or their asylum claims will not even be considered. They will be deemed inadmissible because they travel through safe countries, which doesn't make sense. The international law does not say you have to stay in the first safe country. And again, we have this mentality in Britain that we expect France and Italy, in Germany and others to take on refugees, and we are unwilling to play our fair share. We're in the top 20 countries in the world for taking in refugees. Germany is the only one in the top 10. Most refugees are hosted in neighboring countries in the developing world. There are about 80 million displaced people, about 30 million refugees, and half of them are children. Only a small percentage are in Europe. So 1 in 9 refugees are in Europe. The 9 of them are in developing countries. So um, last year we had 35,000 asylum applications. That's nothing. The government just creates a crisis without, instead of focusing on having a humane and compassionate asylum system where you treat people as individuals, not some statistics and numbers. They want to blame it on refugees and asylum seekers. So then they're going to make it difficult with family reunification. They're going to make it harder, put people in illegal limbo, not give them refugee status, and just threaten them with detention and deportation and removals. The focus is very much on if you come here through resettlement, which is a very small number of people, then you are fine. We'll support and help you. But if you come through by your own means or by your regular means, then we will penalize you and treat you as a criminal, which is very concerning. And the UNHCR has said this breaks international law and the humanitarian laws in the UK. Will encourage other countries to do the same. And the UN Convention of Refugees is there to protect people and give them safety and protection and asylum, and not to do this, because the UK, about 60% people usually get asylum when they apply. The rest, about another 10%, 20% gets through the court. So almost 70, 80% people are genuine refugees, according to the government's own statistics and data. And then now they're saying, no, they're not genuine refugees, even though when they are. So it's very concerning. It's kind of sad to see that the inhumane policies in the hostile environment at play. Family reunification will become even more harder. We had about 30,000 people coming in the last 5 years through family reunification, so people are able to bring their spouses and their children. I mean, there are a lot of people who ask, well, where are all the women and men? Where are the women and children? Because we're only getting this young man coming here, and we're seen as a threat, and they should fear us. In actual fact, we're just ordinary people with hopes and aspirations and dreams. And so the family reunification actually brings in the children and women, but the government is going to make it harder. It's already very restrictive. Our immigration system is one of the most restrictive in the world. We don't allow asylum seekers to work. We put people in indefinite detention. There is very little help and support available in terms of integration and language and other resources. So yeah, I feel there's a lot wrong. Instead of improving it, we're going backwards and disapproving it. Anyhow, I had then just chance to find my brother, which was really wonderful. Through faith and fate, I got help and support from people. After the age dispute was resolved, I moved into Bolton in Greater Manchester. Went to school there. Started in year 10. Managed to get 10 GCSEs. all HCs, despite English being my not being my second or first language. It was hard work, determination, and focus, and the support of teachers and people who believed in me. I overcome a lot, and I was able to go to college, do my A levels, and then went to Manchester University to do my politics degree. Just going there in itself was an achievement for me. I've just said that in a sentence or two, but there was many years of struggle and challenges for me. I never imagined, somebody from Afghanistan, a shepherd, would have a chance to go to one of the world's top institutions to study. And then a few years ago, I did my master's at Coventry as well. I carried the Olympic torch. The book came about, traveled the world, I traveled across the UK, raising awareness, getting people to show compassion and solidarity with refugees. And so, yeah, it's just really, it's really amazing that I was able to do all these things. And I hope to continue being useful. I hope to, bring about to light what's happening in the world when it comes to refugees. And I mean, I could go on and on, but I encourage you to please, do whatever you can by writing to your MP, by going on demonstration, by befriending, volunteering, mentoring refugees if you're able to, supporting local charities. All these things helps, and we definitely need to be, signing petition and doing all these small things. It goes a long way. So yeah, thank you for listening, and thanks for your time. And I look forward to the question. Thank you, Liz.
Oh, thank you, Gulwali. Wow, what I've heard you lecture before, but your words never fail to just fill me with absolute admiration for you. You are such an incredible role model. Your resilience, your determination, and you are so humble. But this journey you have made, and from these beginnings, I mean, being a shepherd actually is a hugely complex task, and living in the mountains isn't easy. So maybe, like you said, you alluded to earlier, that prepared you in some way for the journey you made. One thing that really shone out for me in that lecture was when you spoke of the kindness, when you were given the orange juice and the croissant by the police, when somebody finally did something positive and kind for you. Oh, and here is your beautiful.
Sorry, yes, I have been tasked with Zoha.
Away
Anyway,
from her
apologize.
now. Don't apologize, because this is what we love to see, that your good work is going to carry on in this wonderful young lady here. Hello.
Hope so.
Hello. Look in there. Hi, baby girl.
She just wakes up.
Now, I need to tell members of staff. So if you're watching at Bootham School and the class have questions, please can you take those questions, and if you email them to me, I can then get them on the screen and Gulwali can answer them. While maybe those questions are coming in, I wanted to just speak to the students who are listening. At the end there, you were challenging us as individuals, as people in this country, and telling us the things we can do. And they so fit with our Quaker philosophy at Bootham School. The idea of living adventurously, speaking truth to power, the idea of seeing light wherever it is, showing empathy to people, showing kindness, looking for the goodness. And maybe we even need to do that in some of our politicians, who it's very easy to criticize sometimes. I think I've got some questions coming in. Thank you. I'm gonna go to the door. It's an old-fashioned system here. Thank you. So, questions coming in through the door on piece of paper.
That's great.
Okay, so yeah, thank you. And you've thrown down the gauntlet, and I'm sure our students are going to respond. So I've got lots of questions here. So the first one here: what was your reaction, Gulwali, when your family decided to send you to Europe? Were you sad, relieved, angry, scared? Those are what the students written, but were there other things you felt?
Yeah, I had all these emotions, but at the same time, the situation was very complex and complicated, and the circumstances were such that I was very sad that I had to leave my family, and I had no idea when I'll be able to return. I mean, it's been 14 years. I have not seen my mom and my siblings and my family. This was not something I imagined. My mother saved us, but she also lost us, So it's the thing that I hope people understand, that, nobody leaves their home easily, and people do. This is the last thing they do. This is the last result. And when people come here, the least we could do is to show kindness and compassion, and acknowledge that, being a refugee, it's a huge sacrifice. It's not something light. And so, yeah, I had all these emotions, and I was quite young. I didn't really understand.
Incredibly young. Incredibly young, Gulwali. I just saw a question come on the screen up here, which I'm going to go to because I'm delighted to say our younger students at Bootham Junior School seem to be watching in Year 6. And this question is interesting. All these questions about feelings. So this one here is from Blake in Year 6. How did you feel when you were in prison?
Yeah, I felt like prison is such a like if somebody tells you to stay in one room and you can't go out, that in itself will it's kind of it tightens your heart. It's like you are in a cage in a sense, like a bird in a cage can't go anywhere. So when I was in prison, times just literally became time was multiplied. Like a day become a few days become a week. It was incredibly frustrating, and it was just that I was not supposed to be there. Prison is not a nice place, especially if you have not committed any crime. And even like I've now been advocating and campaigning for not putting people in prison, even people who are criminals, we should find ways in dealing with them. And I saw a documentary recently of this man who was, instead of sending him to prison, they released him and put him to some sort of other type of justice and get them to do community work and to overcome the situations. And he
Yeah.
said, look, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if I hadn't had the chance. If I go to prison, I would become even worse. So prison is definitely not a place, especially to send innocent people to. Yes, if people are criminals, maybe understandably, but at the same time, it's just like your freedom is taken away, and you have no choice over anything. You're, the time you sleep, the time you wake up, and the things that you do. It just, it's a miserable place to be.
Sounds so terrible. The expression used there, like a cage around your heart, so powerful. Another question from someone in Year 6, from B. Do you? This is such a nice question. I bet you will just brush over this though. Do you ever feel amazed, Gulwali, by how much you have achieved?
I try not to overthink about it. When I talk to my friends, they're like, "Oh, it's not a big deal. You've written a book about your experiences. We all gone through it," which is true for us because we've gone through it. It's not a big thing, but we shouldn't have to. So I do feel like I've done things in the last 10 years that people do in their entire lives, but I say this with humbleness. I'm not saying this with arrogance. And definitely, I think if you put yourself in a situation and take on every opportunity and stay concentrated, you stay focused and determined and dedicated, and you have the right people around you to encourage you, to support you, then you could achieve. I mean, I had to catch up on school. A level was tough. University was challenging. I had to have so many sleepless nights. I never imagined, graduating, getting a degree, and doing masters and do the things that I've done. I have a lot of refugee friends who sadly don't get this opportunity because of their legal status, uh, because of lack of opportunities. There's just so many things that prevents them doing so. So I have been, in that sense, fortunate that I've been given these opportunities to achieve and overcome. I mean, like my school invites me back after 10 years to present awards and certificates, and they have named an award after me, which is really wonderful. I'm really humbled by it, and I'm really, glad. It's called Gulwali Passarlay's Award for Overcoming Adversity. And I said to them, look, I'm still alive. Why would you name an award after me? And like carrying the Olympic torch, being one of the 8,000 people. I have the torch and it has 8,000 holes in it. There's one represents me. Like I played a small part in something so huge and magnificent. So all these things makes me really proud. But I continue to be grounded and not to become arrogant. And so hopefully I do complain about things now. I complain about the weather. I complain about like traffic. I complain about small things. So I have become somewhat British in terms of the complaining aspects of things.
in that you've learned how to complain. No, you are an incredible person, Gulwali, and I think someone just needs to keep reminding you that. It's fantastic. I've had quite a few questions coming in from different people asking about language barriers during your journey. How did the language barrier affect you? Another one here was a similar one, which was, did you struggle to communicate with people as you were traveling? So do you want to maybe tell us a little bit about
Yeah,
that, how you
I'm glad
overcame
people
that?
asking such a good question. So language was always a barrier. It was difficult to communicate, but when you are in situation and circumstances where you have no choice but to somehow pass on the information and get the information to people, I was able to, to use some sign language, to use some words in English that I've learned, to use different languages. And a lot of the people, for example, Farsi was kind of widely spoken. I was learning. Kurdish was quite similar to Farsi. There was a lot of words, from Arabic, from Pashto, from Dari. We used to mix things to get the message across. And the most important thing was, as I was saying, is food, shelter, and survival. So there's three, four important things, and you are able to find the right words for, to get help. But it was always a struggle, and especially when I was in Italy, If it wasn't for my brother, I would be speaking Italian. I would have certainly stayed there, and if I was able to communicate, they would have understood my situation. So there was many places where there was miscommunication, misunderstanding, a lot of lead to some problems in issues. But nevertheless, when you are in that kind of place where you have to somehow find a way to communicate, you
Yeah.
communicate. I think it's a human thing, like, if you're
Yeah,
in
yeah.
need,
You find that way, however it is, and when one action, when one maybe trying a word fails, you try an action, or you point to something. Yeah, yeah, incredible. So if this is a superb question, if this is from Naman, if you were Home Secretary, what 3 changes would you make to make the system fairer for asylum seekers and refugees? 3 might be a bit much, Gulwali, so maybe we'll just ask you: is there anything that you think the Home Secretary could do which could make things fairer, make the system fairer for asylum seekers and refugees?
Yeah, sadly, the Home Secretary has been doing a lot, but the wrong things in the other direction. She wants to make the system fair and firmer. It is anything but, and it's going to make it more harder for people, put people in a destitution, in detention. There will be a lot of deportation. People will be in constant limbo and fear. They can't plan their future. I think we are sending completely the wrong message to people who are fleeing, persecutions and injustice. So, if I was Home Secretary, I would make sure that we have a humane system. Of course, I understand we can't grant asylum to everyone. I wish we could, but we have to have a system in place where it's fair, it's humane, and it's compassionate. I want people to be at the heart of the system. At the moment, it's I'm people like me are seen as some sort of statistics and number. I've been refugees are used as a political tool, and we are seen as a threat, and we are people to be fear up, and there's so much hatred. You see if you follow the Home Office Twitter page, you see that the messages they're putting out full of lies and misinformation and untrue stuff, and that raises that makes people angry. That makes
Frightened.
people kind of
Yeah,
follow these traps of how we are to blame and we are the problem. So yes, I would definitely, the 3 things I would do is to put people at the heart of the system, make it compassionate, make it fair, and get rid of the hostile environment, because the hostile environment has not worked. This is the idea that they want to make it as hard as difficult for people as possible. Like, for example, there are around 100,000 people in the UK who have no access to public fund, recourse to public fund. There are people who have been working and paying taxes, but because of the pandemic, they have lost their jobs or whatnot. They can't get help. They can't get support because the government have this idea that they want to make sure that they make your life unbearable. Even though if you're here legally, if you're here through a visa. So, for example, if you come here as a spouse, come here as a student. We saw during the pandemic, there were students from universities lining up outside food banks, lining out outside charities to get food and basic necessities, because the government have this assumption, this idea that no matter your situation, no matter how much money you give to the economy, to the universities, or the taxes you pay, but when you are in need, we should not support you because that's your own fault. And so, yeah, just one example, so, and
yeah,
also, like, bringing your spouse here, it's like you have to be earning 19,000 pounds, 18,600 pounds, if you want to bring your spouse and children over. Like, the system is such a cruel and inhumane system in so many ways, and I just can't stand it. So I want the system to be humane. I want things to be done with treating people with respect and dignity, and just putting ourselves in the shoes of these people. Like, how
yeah.
I just want
Treating
people
them
to
like
move.
humans. Yeah.
Yes, sorry, that was a long answer,
No,
but
you
definitely
got really
compassion.
passionate. That's okay. There's more questions here coming in online. I've got questions on paper as well. So, um, I think you answered one of them. You've told us already you haven't been back to Afghanistan since you left. But I've got another question here. How did you feel the first time you saw your brother when you were reunited? Can you sum that up for us?
That was wonderful. I mean, we met by chance, and it was through some friends who met him in London. He was living in Manchester at the time, and I was living in Kent. And it was wonderful when the friends came back and said, "Look, we met your brother." It just happened to be, and I think God was supposed to bring us together. It was wonderful. The government was very uncooperative. They didn't want to help me, so I knew I would meet him one day. That was my kind of faith and hope that I will meet him, and it was great that when he called and he visited me. And uh, in hindsight, I'm glad the smugglers separated us, because if we had stayed together, we would have struggled to see each other suffer and go through pain, and perhaps at some point we would have been separated anyway. So
Mhm.
him not being with me, I was determined to find him, and that helped me to stay focused and not give up on the journey. So yeah, and I was sad at the time, but when I look at it back now, things happens for a reason.
Yeah. And there's another question. People are so interested in your family and what's going on for them. The question we've had is, are you able to be in touch with your family using technology in Afghanistan? Are you able to keep them up to date? Have they, seen your beautiful baby daughter there on online, things like that?
Yeah, I'm in touch with my family. A lot has happened. Sadly, my grandma passed away a few years ago. One of my little sister passed away. These are occasions that I wanted to be there, and it was tragic, but at the same time, this happens once in a lifetime. And also, my brother got married. One of my sister got married. I was not there. I got married. My family was not here. And so, yeah, they have seen Bibi Zoha, and I would love for my mom and my family to actually have been here, or we have been able to visit them. It just the security situation is pretty bad. But I'm hopeful that at some point I'll be able to see them and they'll get to see us. My wife had a chance to visit them a few years ago, which was good. But the security situation in Kabul, in Afghanistan in general, is going from bad to worse. So it's it's just concerning to see the instability continues.
Yeah.
But yeah, we are in touch, and they have very little understanding of my life. Like they don't really get what I'm doing. They just think I'm kind of wasting my time. I should just get a job and just focus on things like I shouldn't be traveling too much, and it's just kind of risky and dangerous. But yeah, it's wonderful that we are connected and we are able to talk.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. Okay, so I've got just a few more questions on here. So we've answered the one about your family. Yeah, one of the things some of the students have been exposed to is the Museum Without a Home. And the Museum Without a Home, I'm sure you know, is this exhibition it has a mixture of exhibits, but some of the exhibits are things that refugees have travelled with them, something they've taken from home. And the question we've got here from somebody in year 6 is, were you allowed to take, this is from Karis, were you allowed to take anything with you? Or did you, allowed, you were making that journey on your own. Did you take anything with you, a talisman or something which was special to you or useful to you on your journey?
Thank you. That's a very nice question. Well, actually, I had a small rucksack. There was some trousers, some shirts in there, some like basic clothes stuff. Nothing more. I remember I had a nail cutter, um, and I didn't have anything special in there. So it was just basically the thing that I needed, like some food and stuff. Usually would be there, and mainly clothes and shoes. So nothing special. And I like photographs or things that I have took because like I didn't knew what's going to happen or when will I be back home. I wasn't able to think through these things. But some people do take things that are precious to them. So I didn't have anything that was precious to me.
Okay, that's a really nice answer. Thank you. Alex from the junior school is asking about, is the war still going on Afghanistan? Of course, there isn't officially a war, is there? But the Taliban are still active. There are still groups
Yeah,
against the
it's far
government.
more worse. It's far more worse than what it was when I left, and now the U.S. is pulling out, which is good. They shouldn't have been there in the first place, but the Taliban's are literally threatening every province, and there's been fighting in about 30 provinces out of the 34 in the last few months. There's been huge casualties, and there's been bombings in inner cities, and there's just so much terror and violence. So yeah, there's about 20 terrorist organizations operating in Afghanistan, and the government has been struggling, and the international community has been kind of pulling back its support, and have been signing agreements with the Taliban and giving them more legitimacy and kind of freedom to do whatever. So
Yeah.
yes, it's quite bad. So there is a war and conflict still happening. And as I was saying earlier, that there was a report out the other day which says Afghanistan is the most insecure, the most unstable, and the most unsafe country in the world.
Yeah. Now, I've got various messages coming on the chat, which my brilliant technician Luke has just reminded me of. So you've had some love sent to you from Abra Khalid, who may be a friend of yours, I don't know, but just sending you some love there. Jane Lund from Refugee Week in York has said, thank you so much. Just to add to the previous question, she says, I support a young asylum seeker, so would love you to pass on some advice to her. So one of the questions that's come in a few times online, one from Dulcador86, Jane's asking this as well, and somebody else said, what would you say to your 12-year-old staff? So can you give any advice, or what would you have said to yourself if you could have given yourself a piece of advice before you made the journey? What piece of advice would you maybe have given to yourself?
I think it's tough to say about the journey. Just trying to stay safe and trying to not believe people. not, I mean, it's difficult. Sometimes you have to trust people, but then I think not trusting strangers and not trusting smugglers. But here I feel like, I wish I knew that things will get better. I want asylum seekers in the UK to know that things will hopefully get better. They need to have the hope and keep up their aspirations and trying to get help and support and seek, like, look for people who could actually help them, like charities, organization, individuals. If they could be mentored, could be befriended. I want young people to keep themselves busy and engaged, whether if they're interested in cricket or sports and other activities and politics and activism. Just get involved. Don't waste time. I think time is such a precious thing. So that will be my advice: not to lose hope and not to waste time, because every day becomes a week, or weeks becomes a month, and months becomes a year. I didn't just become an author and a graduate in the things that I've done overnight. It happened gradually. So every day
Yeah.
leads to another leads. So whenever you have a chance, take on every opportunity that comes your way, and don't lose hope. I understand it's quite difficult, especially if you're in legal limbo. I was took me 5 years to get my refugee status, and that 5 years was quite uncertain for me. I couldn't plan. I was trying to focus on my studies, but on the back of my head is like, what's going to happen? And the Home Office, if they don't grant me status, I'll be undocumented. I'll be destitute, and they could detain and deport me. So there's always these things happening. But I want young asylum seekers to. The most important thing is to learn the language and trying to engage in whatever activities that they like. And
Yeah.
be part of something, and don't sit and be isolated, because that is depressing. And
And
most of us have trauma. Most of us have been traumatized and have mental health issues. So yeah,
yeah.
that would be the advice.
So you've given three bits of advice there. One is don't give up hope, which is really important. Get involved in things and try and learn the language of the country which you're taking asylum in. And I think actually through that you've answered quite a few questions which came in, which were similar along those lines. And there's just time, I think, for a couple more. So you've answered about how you've kept resilience. I think Kiz B86. I hope you feel that question was answered. Abra Khalid has said, going back to school, you mentioned struggling to catch up. There we go. The questions come up on the screen. Have you had access to tutoring lessons? I'm also hoping that you received mental health support. If not, what were the barriers? So maybe you could just address part of that, because that's quite a long question. So those first bits, maybe did you
Yeah. So
need?
in school, I didn't get, to be honest, I didn't get much mental health support. But when I was at school, the school nurse referred me to different counseling and mental health services. That was helpful. And the thing that has helped me was keeping busy, staying active, being involved in youth participation work, youth voice work, working with, like, the Children's Society, the British Youth Council, just being active and trying to contribute and give to society. At school, I was very engaged and active. I left with like 50 certificates of achievement, because I was doing extra activities and extra things as a
Yeah.
school member, school council member, senate member, and as an ambassador and so on. Even in college, I won so many awards. I was a school governor, student governor. I was a part of the student council, doing things around equality and diversity. I won an excellent gold award for contribution to college life when I was at Sixth Forum. At university, actually, I was a student of the year. I won a distinguished medal of achievement,
Wow.
which was like really humbling. So everywhere I went, not only did I study, I did these extra things which kind of kept me busy
Yeah.
and put my mind up the things that I was thinking. I still have nightmares. I still have traumas that hasn't gone away. It's just it stays with you. But I did get some help with mental health, but not so much so that I needed. And I think there needs to be more resources available from the NHS, as well as local authorities doing more in supporting young people who are asylum seekers and accompanied minors and refugees.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Thank you so much. Okay, this really has got to be the last one. There are other questions coming in. I'm so sorry if we haven't got to your question. But the question that I saw before, which I just thought was really worth answering, which is, have you suffered any discrimination or racism since coming to the UK? And I fear I know the answer to this, but I would hope the answer is no. But
Yeah, I mean, my experience has been very positive. But earlier on, when I was living in Kent, there was discrimination and racism. People were mean and calling us names, and we were scared to even walk in the park when I was living in Gravesend. But uh, my experience has been, as I said, positive. But now, since Brexit, I feel, especially on social media and Twitter, there's people just mean and miserable and hateful. But there are other refugees who have not had such a good experience as to me. I've traveled the world, I've traveled the UK. People have been very kind and generous to me. I haven't had much issues with racism, but I know it exists and it happens. I had to deal with institutional racism. I think people has worried me, but the system has not. So the Home Office, social services, a lot of these organizations that I had to deal with early on, there was certainly an element of discrimination and institutional racism.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm sorry for that, and I am so glad you have risen above it to do everything you're doing. And thank you for your advocacy for refugees everywhere. Thank you for your storytelling. Thank you for your passion and your humble approach. You've really brought this real world issue home to us this afternoon, and I can only
Thank you,
thank you
Liz.
from the
Yes,
bottom
I
of
just
my
want us,
heart,
like,
Gulwali.
thank you. I feel like we all have the capacity and capabilities to touch people's lives, and let's do it in a good way. Let's do it in a positive way. We were discussing earlier on before the talk that we can influence people, we can touch people, and it's up to us how we do that. And it's just like, if you can't help someone, can't support them, at least don't harm them, don't be mean to them. And so, yeah, thank you for
Yeah.
this opportunity, and I hope I could visit in person. My visit to your school a few years ago, I really enjoyed. I love York. York is my favorite place up north. Maybe the
Please
Yorkshire
come
isn't,
back.
but it's just so far away from places. Like, it just, it's
I
far. But I
know.
love to visit and hope to come in person next time.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Gulwali, and thank you to everyone for listening. Thank you for the questions, Gulwali. Hopefully, you'll see those questions, but the ones we haven't answered, maybe. But thank you, everybody, and it's goodbye from us. And have a great rest of your refugee week, whatever you're going to do in it. Thank you very much. Bye.